My name is Charlotte Harrington, and I never imagined I'd be fighting for control of the family business I'd spent 8 years rebuilding. The crystal glasses clinked around the private dining room at Ellsworth, Boston's most exclusive restaurant. I smiled as Daniel Whitmore, lead investor at Meridian Capital, raised his glass with genuine enthusiasm. After months of negotiations, I'd finally secured an $8 million investment to take my family's gourmet food business national. The champagne was flowing, the investors were beaming, and my parents looked happier than I'd seen them in years. 8 years ago, I had walked away from a promising finance career to save my parents' struggling shop. Everyone thought I was crazy to leave a 6-figure salary for a family business 3 months from bankruptcy, but I saw potential where others saw risk. I remember when your parents' shop was just that little storefront in Cambridge, said Vivian Colwell, my former business school professor who had introduced me to the investors. And now look at this, national distribution, an online subscription model, and those manufacturing partnerships. Remarkable transformation, Charlotte. I felt a glow of pride as the investors nodded appreciatively. The journey hadn't been easy. I restructured operations, rebranded our product line, secured strategic partnerships, and built an e-commerce platform from scratch. Harrington Gourmet had grown from a beloved local shop to a national brand, with our specialty jams and artisanal condiments now shipping to 48 states. None of this would have happened without Charlotte's vision, my father said, raising his glass. When Helen and I started this business 25 years ago, we never imagined it could become what it is today. My mother nodded, smiling, but something flickered across her face, a hesitation I recognized all too well. As the investors discussed expansion plans I'd meticulously prepared, I felt my mother's hand slip into mine under the table. Charlotte dear, she whispered, leaning close enough that her perfume enveloped me, this is all very exciting, but remember when Alexander returns from his program next month, he'll make a better CEO for the family business. You've done wonderful groundwork, but he has the right education for this scale. My brother Alexander, the golden child, had been traveling through Europe for the past year after getting his MBA, barely checking in on the family business I'd been rebuilding with my blood, sweat, and tears. I kept my smile firmly in place as I squeezed my mother's hand back, but ice was forming in my stomach. 8 years of 18-hour days, skipped vacations, and postponed personal life, and she still saw me as the temporary caretaker of Alexander's birthright. Everything okay? Whitmore asked, noticing our exchange. Absolutely perfect, I replied, raising my glass higher. But behind my smile, gears were already turning. Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. 8 years ago, I had been the rising star at Morgan Stanley when my father called with news that changed everything. The family business was failing. They'd overextended with a second location, and the recession had hit their luxury food items hard. They were 3 months from closing their doors permanently. I still remember my colleagues' reactions when I resigned. You're leaving finance to sell fancy jam, my boss had asked incredulously. Even Alexander, then finishing his undergraduate degree, had questioned my decision. It's a sinking ship, Charlotte. Let it go and find something else. But I couldn't. Harrington Gourmet wasn't just a shop, it was my parents' legacy. I grew up watching them craft recipes, source ingredients from small family farms, and build personal relationships with every customer. Walking away from my finance career wasn't just saving a business, it was preserving a dream. The first 2 years were brutal. I worked the front counter during the day and pored over spreadsheets at night. I sold a second location, renegotiated supplier contracts, and modernized accounting systems. I even took out a second mortgage to fund our first e-commerce platform and slept on a cot in the stockroom for 6 months when I couldn't cover both rent and mortgage payments. Meanwhile, Alexander occasionally offered advice from afar but was too busy building his own career to help with the business I was saving. My parents never seemed to mind, always quick to point out how he was gaining valuable experience that would someday benefit Harrington Gourmet. By the time the investors turned their attention back to me, my mother's subtle nudge still lingered in my mind. Charlotte Harrington, CEO in title but question in trust, I had spent years proving myself. And now, with Alexander poised to return from Europe, I could feel the old pattern about to repeat. Charlotte, Whitmore began, leaning forward, could you share your vision for the company's leadership structure moving forward? I composed myself, hiding the churn of frustration behind a calm smile. The leadership structure will remain as it is currently, I said carefully. I will continue as CEO, with my parents serving as brand ambassadors and advisors to preserve the authentic family story that our customers connect with. Kingston nodded, jotting notes in his notebook. And your brother? Before I could answer, my mother jumped in. Alexander has just completed his executive MBA at Wharton. He'll be joining the leadership team next month, bringing valuable perspectives from his consulting experience. My jaw tightened. Alexander had spent exactly 3 weekends at the shop over the past 8 years, yet my mother spoke as if he had been integral to our growth all along. I kept my expression neutral. Kingston exchanged a glance with Diane Thomas, another key investor. Something subtle shifted in the room, a silent reassessment. They were recalculating the value of their $8 million investment if my parents insisted on putting Alexander in a position of real authority. Mrs. Harrington, Kingston said cautiously, our investment is largely based on Charlotte's track record and vision. Any significant leadership changes would need to be discussed before finalizing the agreement. My mother looked surprised, as though it had never occurred to her that the investors might be backing me, not the family name. My father cleared his throat, uncomfortable. Of course, we're all on the same page here. Charlotte has built something remarkable. We are proud parents excited to have both our children involved. Nothing is set in stone. The conversation shifted to safer topics, but the damage was done. I noticed Kingston speaking quietly with his team. Their expressions were serious. They hadn't missed the underlying tension or the implications for their investment. That evening, I couldn't sleep. By 6 a.m. Saturday, I was at my desk in the nearly empty Harrington Gourmet headquarters, surrounded by spreadsheets, market analyses, and 8 years of documentation. Jorge, our head of maintenance, raised an eyebrow when he saw me. Miss Harrington, everything okay? Just preparing for a big meeting, I said without looking up. Another one, after last night's dinner, Jorge murmured. You work too hard, you know. I smiled faintly. I appreciate the concern, Jorge. But this one's important, maybe the most important meeting I've ever had. By 6:30 a.m. I called Vivian Caldwell. I need your advice, and possibly your help, I said bluntly. 45 minutes later, Vivian arrived with 2 coffees and a determined expression. After listening carefully, she asked, what do you really want, Charlotte? The question hung in the air. Recognition from my parents. The CEO position I was already performing. Or something else entirely. I want what I've earned, I said finally. And I want to stop pretending that my family values my contribution. Vivian nodded. Then let's make some calls. By noon, I had arranged an emergency meeting with Kingston and his team for Sunday morning. I also contacted my loyal employees, Daphne from marketing, Jason from operations, and Tamora from product development, asking them to come in for a strategy session. These were people who had built this company alongside me while Alexander was off, finding himself before his MBA. Calls from my parents went to voicemail. This weekend wasn't about them, it was about securing my future, with or without Harrington Gourmet. Sunday morning arrived with a knot in my stomach. The office felt unusually quiet, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. By 8:45 a.m., Kingston and his investment team had arrived, followed by Diane Thomas and the Meridian Capital legal advisors. Their presence immediately shifted the energy in the room, calm, professional, but loaded with unspoken questions. My core team, Daphne, Jason, and Tamara, had already arrived early, along with a dozen other key employees. They had been with me through the chaos, the sleepless nights, the financial risk, and the long days of rebuilding Harrington Gourmet. Their silent support was tangible, a reminder that the true foundation of this company wasn't just the Harrington name, it was the people who had actually built it. At 8:55 a.m., the elevator doors opened. My parents arrived first, my mother in an elegant suit that spoke of control authority, my father weary but attempting calm. Their expressions told me they were expecting a different outcome, that Alexander, our golden child, would somehow claim his rightful position. At 8:57 a.m., Alexander strolled in. Expensive suit, confident smile, perfect posture. He greeted the employees casually, barely acknowledging me, as if he had walked into a familiar set he'd only recently discovered. My chest tightened. 8 years of blood, sweat, and tears, and this was how my parents would present him, ready to take the helm without earning a single moment of it. I waited silently in my office, reviewing my notes, rehearsing my words. At 9 a.m. sharp, Kingston opened the meeting. Thank you all for coming. Let's get straight to the point. Meridian Capital's investment was approved based on Charlotte Harrington's leadership and vision. Her track record, team, and growth strategy formed the foundation of our decision. Any significant leadership change represents a material alteration to our agreement. Alexander leaned forward, attempting a confident tone. I can assure you that my executive MBA and consulting experience make me well qualified to, Kingston cut him off. To replace the person who saved this company. Who increased its valuation by 3,000%. Who secured this investment. The room went silent. My mother's face paled. My father's jaw tightened. Even Alexander seemed unsure, realizing that words alone couldn't erase the years I had dedicated to building Harrington Gourmet from near bankruptcy to a national contender. Kingston slid a folder toward my parents. We have a proposition. 2 options. Inside the folder were 2 legal documents. The first outlined the original investment deal with explicit language ensuring I would remain CEO for at least 5 years, while Alexander's role would be strictly non-executive. The second document was a term sheet for a $10 million investment in a completely new company, one that I would found and lead independently, with no connection to the Harrington name or family ownership. What is this? My father asked, voice barely above a whisper. I call it insurance, I said calmly. In case you still don't understand what's truly valuable about this company. Alexander snatched the second document, face flushing as he scanned it. You're threatening to start a competing business, your own family. I met his gaze evenly. I'm protecting the value I've created. Value that you had no part in building. Where were you when I was sleeping on a cot in the stockroom to make payroll? When I personally delivered orders? When I redesigned the entire product line while working the register? My mother looked stricken. Charlotte, you can't possibly mean to abandon your family legacy. Before I could respond, Daphne, Jason, Tamara, and 15 other employees entered the conference room. Excuse the interruption, Daphne said confidently. But if Charlotte leaves to start a new company, we all go with her. The room erupted in whispers. My parents stared in disbelief. The people they thought they controlled, the beating heart of their business, were standing firmly on my side. I spoke quietly but firmly, the choice is yours. Recognize what I've built and who built it, or watch me walk away with everything that makes this company valuable. For nearly 10 minutes, silence reigned as my parents and Alexander examined the documents. Kingston and his team observed patiently. The employees who had supported me remained a visible reminder of where the company's true value lay. Finally, my father sighed and pushed the first document forward. We'll sign this one, he admitted, voice heavy with defeat. Charlotte stays as CEO. Alexander sat frozen. My mother pressed her lips into a thin line but nodded. Kingston's expression softened with approval. A wise choice, he said, signaling his legal team to finalize the paperwork. 6 months later, Harrington Gourmet is thriving. Our national expansion is ahead of schedule, new product lines have exceeded projections, and my position as CEO is secure. Yet the real victory isn't just in numbers, it's in finally being recognized for the work I've done, regardless of family expectations. With the legal documents signed and my CEO position secured, I finally felt a surge of clarity and focus. The first order of business was rebuilding the company culture. For too long, Harrington Gourmet had been a battleground of family dynamics, with employees often caught in the crossfire. Now, with the investment secured and my leadership affirmed, I could set new standards, ones based purely on merit, collaboration, and accountability. I called an emergency team meeting that Monday morning. Daphne, Jason, Tamara, and the other key staff members gathered in the conference room, their expressions a mix of excitement and curiosity. Thank you all for showing up yesterday, I began, my voice steady but charged with purpose. You stood by me when it mattered most, and I want you to know that your loyalty is not only recognized, it's the foundation of our future. We are not just saving a company, we are building something remarkable together. There were nods, murmurs of agreement, and a few quiet smiles. This was my real family, my team. Not the Sinclair Harringtons who had chosen tradition over merit, not Alexander who had never earned the respect of the shop floor, but the people who had worked alongside me from day one. Our first step was operational. I asked Jason to revisit the expansion plan, analyzing which markets would yield the fastest ROI. Daphne and Tamara would overhaul the marketing strategy to highlight Harrington Gourmet's innovation and commitment to artisanal quality. Every decision, from product launches to staffing, would now go through a merit-based review, removing the influence of family favoritism entirely. Even with the company firmly in my control, I couldn't ignore the tension that lingered in my parents' absence. They were still involved as brand ambassadors, attending events, and providing the family story, but every interaction with them reminded me of the delicate balance I had to maintain. I wanted their support, yes, but I no longer needed their validation. My worth wasn't defined by their recognition anymore, it was defined by results. Meanwhile, Alexander made his first attempt to assert influence. That afternoon, he wandered into the office unannounced, trying to charm employees and offer ideas for expansion. I intercepted him near the shipping area. Alexander, I said calmly, your role here is Vice President of Business Development. That means you report to me. Your ideas are welcome, but you need to respect the structure that was just formally established. He smirked, attempting the casual confidence he had mastered over the years. I just want to contribute, Charlotte. I know I can help. You can help, I agreed, by understanding the foundation I've built and by supporting the team that actually runs this company. This isn't about ego, it's about results. Follow the plan, or you'll be irrelevant. The conversation ended with a resigned glance from him, but I knew this was only the beginning. Alexander had never been used to being subordinate, and I had just established boundaries he hadn't encountered before. That evening, I reviewed the financials and strategy presentations. With the new $10 million investment from Meridian Capital, redirected into the expansion under my leadership, we had the capital to open 3 new distribution centers, launch an entirely new line of preserves, and expand our subscription service internationally. I drafted a phased rollout plan, ensuring that every new hire, partner, and market segment would be aligned with the company's vision and culture. By the end of the week, I could feel a subtle shift in the office. Employees were more engaged, energized by the fact that their loyalty and expertise were finally being recognized. Decisions were made swiftly, without family interference, and every success, every new client or record-breaking subscription milestone, was a validation of the strategy one had fought for over the past 8 years. Even my parents had to acknowledge the change. My mother sent a cautious email praising the launch of the new product line, and my father called just to ask for an update on revenue projections. Both were respectful but distant, as if learning to coexist with the reality that their daughter, not their firstborn son, was now in charge. By the end of the month, it was clear, Harrington Gourmet wasn't just surviving, it was thriving under my leadership. And while the battle with family politics wasn't entirely over, I had established one undeniable fact: the future of this company would be determined by skill, strategy, and hard work, not by birthright. The week after finalizing the investment, I dived headfirst into the expansion plan. Charlotte Harrington Fine Foods was no longer just a national contender, it was poised to become a household name. Our first goal: launching 3 new regional distribution centers strategically located to reduce shipping times and increase our reach. I spent Monday mapping out logistics with Jason, who had quickly become my right hand in operations. We need to ensure that every warehouse mirrors the efficiency and culture of our headquarters, I explained, tapping at the projected schedules and staffing charts. We can't allow the same mistakes that nearly sank the second location 8 years ago. Every employee needs training, every system synchronized. Meanwhile, Daphne and Tamara worked on rebranding our marketing campaign to emphasize the company's story, artisanal craftsmanship, sustainability, and innovation. We are not just selling gourmet gems, Daphne reminded me during our brainstorming session. We are selling the story behind every jar, the heart and sweat of people like you who built this from the ground up. Her words made me smile. That story wasn't just marketing, it was validation. Every viral post, every glowing review, every subscription we gained was because I had refused to let Harrington Gourmet fail. And now, the world was going to see it on a larger scale. But expansion wasn't just about logistics and marketing, it was also about leadership. Alexander's presence remained a thorn in my side. He attempted to involve himself in every meeting, even suggesting ideas he barely understood. I handled him with a mix of firmness and patience. Alexander, I said during one strategy session, we appreciate your input, but decisions regarding operations, finance, and product development are my responsibility. You are here to support, not override. He bristled, but there was a glimmer of understanding. He was learning, albeit slowly, that loyalty and effort could outweigh inherited privilege. For the first time in his life, he had to work within a framework he didn't create, and it frustrated him. As the days passed, our expansion strategy unfolded. By Wednesday, we had finalized site leases for the new distribution centers, recruited regional managers, and implemented training programs that emphasized efficiency, quality control, and customer service. Charlotte Harrington Fine Foods was no longer a single-location business, it was a growing network built on dedication, skill, and vision. Then came the most exciting part: product innovation. Tamara had been experimenting with new preserves and artisanal condiments, and we were ready to roll out a limited edition line featuring seasonal, locally sourced ingredients. I called an internal tasting session, inviting the core team and a few longtime customers who had been part of our subscription program. Their feedback was glowing. "This is the product line you should lead with for the expansion," one of the customers said, savoring a jar of cranberry and rosemary preserve. "It shows the creativity and authenticity your company is known for." I nodded, already envisioning the launch strategy. The limited edition line would be promoted as part of our subscription service and in select gourmet stores nationwide, creating buzz and reinforcing the company's reputation as an innovator. Amid the excitement, I couldn't ignore the tension that lingered with my parents. They had tried to reach me multiple times that week with suggestions and reminders about Alexander, but I had politely declined their interference. This was my vision, my leadership, and I would not compromise it for tradition. By Friday afternoon, I sat in my office, reviewing sales projections, marketing plans, and operational updates. For the first time in 8 years, I felt a sense of control that wasn't just about survival, it was about true ownership. The investors had placed their trust in me, the team had stood by me, and even Alexander was beginning to understand that effort mattered more than birthright. As the sun set over the city, casting golden light across the glass walls of our headquarters, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Harrington Gourmet was no longer just a family business, it was my legacy. Every jar of jam, every carefully crafted condiment, every satisfied customer represented years of struggle, dedication, and determination. And for the first time, no one, not even my family, could take that away from me. Monday morning arrived with a flurry of emails, calls, and shipments. The expansion was officially underway, and I could feel the weight of responsibility settling firmly on my shoulders. Every decision mattered now, not just for Charlotte Harrington Fine Foods growth, but for the team that had trusted me through every high and low. I started the day reviewing international partnership proposals. Several boutique distributors in Europe and Asia were interested in carrying our seasonal and artisanal product lines. I paged through the documents, carefully noting production capabilities, shipping timelines, and compliance requirements. "This is where precision counts," I muttered to myself, jotting down questions for Jason and Tamara. One misstep, and our reputation could be compromised globally. Jason arrived shortly after, coffee in hand, ready to walk through operational forecasts. "We can handle international orders, but we'll need to adjust production schedules and increase staff temporarily," he said. "Shipping logistics will also need to account for customs delays and local regulations." I nodded, feeling a thrill at the challenge. This wasn't just scaling a business, it was proving that Charlotte Harrington Fine Foods could compete internationally while maintaining the quality, care, and authenticity that had become our hallmark. "Let's draft a phase plan," I said, starting with Europe. "We'll scale slowly, monitor results, then replicate in Asia. No shortcuts." Meanwhile, Alexander's growing impatience became impossible to ignore. He had started sending suggestions that contradicted operational protocols and creative strategies I had spent years perfecting. I invited him into my office for a direct conversation. "Alexander, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you need to understand that this company operates on proven systems and vision," I said, keeping my tone professional. "You're part of the team, but my decisions are informed by years of experience in this business. If you want to contribute meaningfully, I'll guide you, but I won't compromise the company's integrity for tradition or ego." His jaw tightened, but I could see he was beginning to recognize the reality he had avoided for years: effort and results mattered more than inheritance. He left my office quietly, a subtle acknowledgement that leadership had rules beyond birthright. By midweek, the team was buzzing with progress. Daphne had finalized marketing campaigns for our European launch, highlighting our seasonal preserves and artisanal condiments. Social media teasers had gone live, generating pre-orders and enthusiastic engagement from our international audience. Tomorrow had coordinated with suppliers to ensure ingredient sourcing would meet new demand without sacrificing quality. Despite the progress, I couldn't ignore the personal cost. Sleep had become a luxury, meals were often skipped, and every moment felt dominated by strategic decisions. But I reminded myself that leadership wasn't glamorous, it was accountability. Every email, call, and decision reflected my commitment to the company, my team, and the vision I had fought so hard to protect. Friday brought a critical investor call. Kingston and his team wanted updates on the international expansion, operational readiness, and projected returns. I presented the phase plan with confidence, highlighting risk assessments, contingency strategies, and projected revenue growth. The investors were impressed, noting that the level of detail and foresight was extraordinary. Madison, Kingston said, "Your leadership continues to exceed expectations. The international expansion is ambitious, but your planning gives us confidence in your vision." I felt a surge of validation. This wasn't just approval, it was recognition that my work, strategy, and dedication were being acknowledged on a global stage. That evening, I reflected on how far we had come. Charlotte Harrington Fine Foods had survived near collapse, grown into a national brand, and was now poised for international recognition, all because of persistence, vision, and a team that had believed in me when my family had not. As I closed my laptop, Alexander stopped by my office one last time that day. "I get it now," he said quietly. "It's not just about being the firstborn. You built this, and everyone knows it. I want to learn from you." For the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope that even family could understand that leadership isn't a right, it's earned. And as I stood in the Charlotte Harrington Fine Foods headquarters, I finally felt a sense of ownership, not just of the company, but of my own future. The expansion had begun, the team was aligned, and even Alexander had started to respect the boundaries of earned leadership. But this was about more than business, it was about closing a chapter on family expectations that had never served me. Monday morning arrived with a clear agenda, finalize the international launch strategy, confirm investor support, and set internal benchmarks for success. Daphne, Jason, and Tomorrow were already in the conference room, reviewing last-minute adjustments to marketing and production. "We're ready, Madison," Daphne said, her eyes bright with determination. "This is going to be big." I smiled. "It already is. Let's just make sure the first steps reflect the care and quality that define us." By 10 a.m., Kingston and his investment team arrived. This meeting was less about securing funds and more about ensuring alignment and trust. I presented a detailed overview of our European launch, showing projected orders, logistics plans, and anticipated revenue growth. I highlighted contingency measures, supplier relationships, and marketing strategies that emphasize sustainability and authenticity, the core values of Charlotte Harrington Fine Foods. Kingston nodded approvingly. "Madison, it's clear you've not only protected the company's domestic growth but created a roadmap for global recognition. We are fully on board." Relief washed over me. After months of preparation, the plan was finally being validated by the investors who mattered most. This was proof that years of late nights, financial risks, and personal sacrifices had not only paid off, they had built a foundation stronger than I could have imagined. Even as momentum built, I knew it was time to confront the last lingering challenge: family. My parents and Alexander had tried to insert themselves into the leadership structure for years, operating on tradition rather than merit. Now, with the investors backing me unequivocally, I arranged a private meeting with them to set clear boundaries. "Mom, Dad, Alexander, I began, Charlotte Harrington Fine Foods is thriving because leadership is based on dedication and results, not birthright. I appreciate your interest, but moving forward, roles and responsibilities will be clearly defined. My mother opened her mouth to protest, but I continued, Alexander, this isn't personal. You have opportunities to grow, but this company reflects years of my strategy, effort, and vision. If you want to be involved meaningfully, it will be within the structure I've established. The silence was heavy, but this time it was different. There was no negotiation, no underlying expectation that they could override my authority. The investors' support had fortified my position, making it impossible for old assumptions to take hold. Within weeks, the European launch went live. Orders flooded in, far exceeding projections, and social media buzz elevated our brand profile globally. Tomorrow's product team innovated new flavors based on market research, and Daphne's marketing campaigns captured the brand story perfectly. Every success reminded me why the sacrifices had been worth it. In the months that followed, the company continued to expand. Alexander learned to respect the chain of command, stepping into a mentoring role rather than a leadership challenge. My parents shifted gracefully into advisory positions, contributing when asked but no longer trying to control. And the team, the people who had stood by me since the beginning, thrived, validated in their loyalty and commitment. I realized something crucial: my worth was never defined by family approval. True legacy comes from creating something of lasting value, standing firm in your vision, and surrounding yourself with people who respect your leadership. Charlotte Harrington Fine Foods had transformed from a near-bankrupt local shop into a national and now international brand, but the real triumph was personal. I had claimed ownership of my work, my future, and my identity as a leader. I wasn't just Madison Harrington, daughter or sister. I was Madison Harrington, the CEO, visionary, and architect of a lasting legacy. As I looked out over the city skyline from my office, I finally felt peace. The challenges, the betrayals, the long nights, they had all been worth it. I had built something extraordinary, and for the first time in my life, I knew that my success was truly mine. The team celebrated quietly that evening, raising glasses to the milestones achieved and the exciting future ahead. I clinked mine with Daphne, Jason, and Tamara, a silent acknowledgement that family wasn't always blood. Sometimes, family is the people who believe in you, fight for you, and help you turn vision into reality. And with that, Charlotte Harrington Fine Foods was no longer just a company. It was my legacy.